Hello. Welcome to the first in a short series of rendering tutorials. We are going to cover a few different things in the next few videos. We're going to look at just some general rules for like setting up a space, doing some basic lighting. We're going to go into more detail into lighting, look at camera positioning and composition and like how to use the camera. How to set up your render settings, and then also do a bit of a dive into Material DNA later on. So in this first video, we're going to do just a really basic render setup, and I'm going to try to keep it quick but explain some of the mechanics of rendering while we're doing things, while we're setting up a space, so that you can kind of follow along with that and tweak it for your needs in your own work. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up a really simple backdrop. I'm going to hit tab and just get rid of some of these faces here, and just delete those, and then I've got this basic kind of backdrop. If I want to, I can kind of scale it out across the y-axis, and maybe I can jump in and add a bevel to this back edge here. Maybe add a few subdivisions in that so that it's a nice curved edge. Right click and hit shade smooth. So this is going to give us a pretty simple backdrop setup. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring an object into this scene so that I'm not trying to render in one of the scenes that I've got like hundreds of objects in. So I'm going to go File and Append. And File Append allows me to find a Blender file in my documents somewhere, wherever I keep my Blender files. And I can jump into that Blender file and look into objects, and I can find an object in there that I know that I want to bring into my new file, and I can just extract that object straight from that Blender file without having to open it or do anything like that. So if I hit append, I've got the couple of objects here. I can just delete these because I don't really need them. And then this one here is going to be kind of the object that I end up using for my scene. Now, you can see like that backdrop's pretty small. This object's pretty large. What I would tend to do, and what I would suggest you do, is keep your backdrop. So when the cube comes in, it's 2 meters by 2 meters. If we bring in another cube, and we bring that up here, and then we jump into our edit mode. Whoops, what happened to my overlays? There we go. Jump into my edit mode. Turn on where are we? Edge length somewhere. There we go. So that's 2 meters. The reason you kind of want to be working at scale with rendering is because this rendering engine is built on the idea that things are the size they are in real life. So this camera is kind of like the size of a regular camera. This light's operating, if you have a look at like operating on watts, so it's emitting. It's relatively physically accurate in how it's emitting light. So the larger your scene is, the more light you're going to need to light it. And you want to keep things within the realms of reality, or else light will start to do weird stuff. Like you'll have your scene will be so big that you've got like a 10,000 watt light to try and just illuminate it, and it won't be doing a good job. So keep things around that kind of cube scale, as in like that cube's basically about the size of a tiny room, and kind of design your scene and build your lighting setups accordingly. So with that, one of the first things I really like to do with my with my camera, just so while I'm setting up a scene, is in the N menu. So when you press N, in fact, let me just turn on my screencast keys so that you can see what I'm doing. When you press N, you get this menu on the right hand side. Click on View, click on Lock Camera to View. Now that means whenever you enter your camera view by either clicking on this button here, you'll see this little dotted red line around it, and that just means that whenever you're moving around, you're moving your camera, and you're not just kind of leaving your camera in one spot. and and moving around, just navigating the viewport normally. As soon as you unlock the camera, when you move, you're moving out of the camera view. So locking your camera and then clicking that button. One thing I tend to do is that if you have a full-sized keyboard, the 0 key on the numpad on the right-hand side will generally take you in and out of camera view mode. So toggling that will jump you into camera. And then what I like to do is set up a shortcut to Shift 0. So that now I can lock and unlock my camera from view. So if I want to leave my camera where it is, I can always unlock the camera from view just by hitting Shift 0. And now I know that if I jump into it and then navigate, I'm not going to move my camera around by accident. And it's only when I've got that little red outline up that I'm going to be moving my camera around. Cool. So another way you can actually handle that situation is by going into the lock camera to view, right-clicking it and adding it to quick favorites. And now when you press Q, it'll bring up your quick favorites menu. If you don't have like the numpad on the other side, then you can check it on and toggle it off just from your quick favorites menu, which is Q, which is a very handy menu to or shortcut to know. Okay, so we've got our camera in a position that we are happy with. Let's move our lighting, but first we want to actually see our lighting, so you'll notice I'm still in the viewport mode. So there are two rendering modes. There is this rendering mode here, which is viewport shading, and then if you hover over this, it's also called viewport shading. But the first viewport shading has a bunch of like settings that you can just toggle by default, so that you can quickly and easily set up a rendering, like a material or things like that. It's kind of like a test bench kind of thing for rendering. So it has like some built-in HDRI maps, the ability to toggle on and off your scene lights, and the ability to toggle on and off a scene world. And you can also make some changes to that your HDRI map as well. So this is kind of your world lighting map. So you can make it, a lot brighter or a lot darker, and you can blur the world. And then if you're in your rendered view, you will see the world behind anything. Like if you're looking at this grey area here in an actual rendered view. So maybe we can just chuck our chair or our whatever this is table thing in here. Bring it down there. So if you actually go to render this, you can mess around with the world opacity as well, so whether or not the actual background shows up in your scene. But this only works in this material, or this kind of like what you might call material design viewport. This one here, so this is the full render view. This one will only render in Eevee. Or at least as far as I know, it only renders in Eevee. This other one will allow you to fully define all of the rendering aspects of rendering, like your render settings, your render engine, all of that kind of stuff. So it's good to prototype in this scene, in this viewport scene here. But when you want to start doing final renders, you want to jump into this one here. So to actually render something, we saw before, we can go up into the render view, render image here, and that creates this rendered view here. And we can go to image and save as, or save this image. Otherwise we can just hit F12 on the keyboard and that'll do the same thing. It's going to render that image for us. So that's, and I'm pretty sure that rendered image is actually going to be a result of what's happening on this screen and not a result of what's happening on this screen. So you won't be rendering out this viewport here. You'll always be rendering out this viewport. So it's just important to know the difference between the two. This is for like developing and prototyping a scene, and this one's for your final rendering.